Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the 4 basic movement patterns. And I know there were times in the past I said there were 6. There are a lot of people who claim 6, but to be honest with you, from a hypertrophy standpoint, which is again where we gain most of our strength, there aren't really 6, are there? There's really just 4. And if we build a base in these 4 movement patterns and we do it correctly, truth be told, we will build probably 90% or more of our muscle mass potential, because everything else is just about filling in the gaps and the weak links. And those weak links vary for you depending upon your genetics, maybe your weak links in the movement patterns you use, your leverages, but they account for less of it. And what are those basic movement patterns? Well, some sort of push. And generally, people say, well, shouldn't it be a vertical versus a horizontal? And it's like, well, does an overhead push of any type really build more muscle versus a horizontal like your bench press? Okay. I don't know that it does. The data doesn't seem to suggest it. People will say, well, more delt. Well, maybe slightly more delt. But we're coming back over to filling in your weak links, aren't we? All right. And I like the bench press for this. And I've done videos explaining why we should use the big 3 for these, why there's an advantage to it. And anyone who argues with that, look, I get it that some people can't perform certain exercises. Okay. Injuries, certain things happening that make those exercises difficult or painful. But it could just be not doing them correctly. It could be overuse problems. But barring those situations, it makes sense to use these classic movements. And I've made videos explaining why they have an advantage, because we have so much coaching data available. We know how to find the weak points on them. We know how to perfect them. Because they're popular, they're contested lifts, and there's a lot of research on them. That gives them an advantage. And I think people who say that they don't work, they're being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. They just want social media points to say, look, we just want to do something different. We want to be different, because they work. People have gotten jacked and stacked and strong off the big 3. But I'll get into what they need to supplement, because they're missing one of the movement patterns, aren't they? They're missing one, and that would leave weak gaps by itself. But what are they? Some sort of press? Some sort of pull with the upper body, whether it's a row, a chin-up, a pull-up. I am very partial these days to pull-ups and chin-ups. Okay? I think they bring a lot to the table. And I don't think the horizontal pulling is important as much if we're doing lots of deadlifting. And that's the reason I'm biased there. We lose a lot of the benefits of the rowing if we're doing lots of deadlifts, or very things close to a deadlift, which is a hip hinge. So I don't care whether it's a horizontal or a vertical. Do they really work that different of muscles? Probably not. Maybe more lower back and things, possibly more upper trap, depending upon your angle and what else is going on in your training. But this comes back over to that point of filling in the gaps due to the movements you select. All of them build the middle and upper back. All of them build the biceps. All presses for the chest, whether they're flat, incline, decline, barbells, dumbbells, dips, they all build the pecs, front delts, triceps. They all build these things. All pulls are going to build the forearms and grip. Okay, then we have squats of some type. Again, I think the back squat makes sense to use. I'm not saying it's the only thing. You guys see me do belt squats all the time. I'm a big fan of the belt squat. Some of that squatting could be single leg movements, but the point is you need a squat movement. You need a movement that puts you into a deep knee bend that works the lower body, that works the quads, adductors, glutes, and hips. Okay. Again, this is for overall development. And then we need a hip hinge of some type. In this case, I'm partial to the conventional deadlift. Does it mean it's the only thing that works? No, I think it works best. I think the conventional deadlift will put more muscle and more strength on you than any other hip hinge because of the musculature involved. And there's studies to support that. The only study that ever really looked at conventional deadlift only hypertrophy actually found it puts an enormous amount of muscle on people, even more than the squat did when compared in two groups. So the only study we have that ever looked at it found it to be true. But what else is a hip hinge? Right? You see me doing these reverse hypers, good mornings, Romanian deadlifts, stiff leg deadlifts. These are all hip hinges. This is a smaller hip hinge here. Uses a lot less muscle, the one you see me doing. The idea is the same. These 4 basic movement patterns, which is going to be a press of some type, a pull of some type, because a deadlift isn't really the same sort of pull we're talking about. We're talking about a row or a pull up or whatever. A lat pull down. A squat, and I do think being on your feet matters to some extent. Again, to some stability involved. I'm not saying a leg press doesn't have its place. I program them all the time for clients after they squat. Okay? And a hip hinge. But these 4 movements are going to build almost everything. And then people say, well, this muscle or that muscle for this person or that, but that's for individual people. There are people who do nothing but chins or rows and bench press who have big delts. They do exist. There are people with big biceps from nothing but chin-ups. The way these movements affect them, their overall training, their genetics. Your weak links are going to be different for each person, aren't they? So that's when I say that at least 90% of your muscle can come from basically mastering these 4 movements. I do mean that, but the way it's going to spread is going to be different for each person because our leverages and genetics are a little different. Okay, our how quickly we have certain muscles grow is going to be different. How much tricep you actually activate on a bench press is going to be different from someone else's. But most of the muscle will be built. Everyone's triceps will grow from bench pressing. Everyone's biceps will grow from the pulling. Everyone's glutes and hamstrings will grow from deadlifting, so on and so forth. But this is our basics. And if you put your focus into these 4 movement patterns and select good versions of them and really put your volume and your workload into those, you're going to get pretty big and pretty strong. Okay, you're going to get pretty, and if you have good programming with all of it and recovery and food, you're going to get pretty big and pretty strong. Everything else is to fill in the gaps. And yes, I do tricep work and everything because I need it. All right? For someone else, they may not. They might have different weak links that come out in these things. And that's what it's all about. But we're just filling in the gaps at that point. We're filling in the gaps. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.